Hello one and all, Old School Gamer 1971 back with yet another opinion. Before I begin, a special shout out to Millie and Lloyd. Also, if you like what you hear, like, subscribe or comment. Double three to make my day. Before I start our first topic today, I would like to say I have spent all week trying to post a video about this topic, but unfortunately the mic stopped working on my camera and I've been trying a few different ways of doing it. This appears to be the best that I can do. So, without further ado, the first topic is games missing in action. Whilst the PlayStation has a vast amount of games out for it, there is a few little gaps that I believe would make the experience both more rounded and as well a better experience for all gamers. One such area is boxing games. Now for me, going right back to the Amstrad, Spectrum, Commodore, BBC microcomputer, MSX, they all had boxing games out for them. And I know there is a arcade one currently available for PlayStation VR, and there is a Creed game on the way for VR, but for the main console there isn't nothing. Now I know there is like MMA games and things like that, but a pure boxing game I don't think is available, and I think it is sorely missed. To be able to create a boxer and train him and then take him around your friend's house and or else download him would be really cool. Could be quite something with the new technology and things that would be quite appealing, I think, to a lot of people.
Did have an actual dragon inside.
So on to Theme Hospital. Now I know that due to Bulldog Games and who owns the rights and everything else, probably wouldn't be possible to do Theme Hospital. However, there is two Theme Hospital-esque games coming out for PC this year, but there is nothing on the horizon from consoles. I remember it being a lot of fun, and certainly I would appreciate at least one, if not more, Theme Hospital games upon a console. Next up, and I don't know how popular an opinion this will be, but I think it's something that's quite important for a console, is kids games. Now, yeah, I know Nintendo has masses and masses of kids games, but if a child, or like my niece and nephew, they both wanted a console like their uncle, a PS4, but my niece, being at a young age like she is, there's nothing that really caters for those first time console users who are about 6 years old. You need that. You need it so that they can grow and become PlayStation owners, and that is their choice. I think it's a pity because I don't think right now they have any plans on making more child orientated games, but the same can be thrown at adults, whereby yes, there can be adult themed, but they're not necessarily aimed at that as a target audience, considering that the person who purchases most games is people around 28 years old. You would have thought that maybe there would be more available for those players. Movie tie-ins. Now this pretty much is a bit of an expansion upon the previous one, kids games, but movie tie-ins. I remember it was a staple that, you know, if you got certain films out, kids films or some adult films that would come out, and you get like either a platform game or whatever else. And I'm not saying that we need 1,000,001 platform games based upon other stuff, but Toy Story 2 Racer came out for PlayStation 1. Whilst it had the characters from the second movie in, the actual game itself was nothing short of amazing. It was a good game, it was a solid kart racer, and it would be nice to see those come back. Finally, Ridge Racer. every PlayStation that I am aware of has had, shall we say, a Ridge Racer game out at some point for it. And to me, it is one of the reasons that I got a PlayStation was Ridge Racer, the original game. I would love to see them remake that game with all the whistles and bells that you could now put into that game due to the fact of the power of the PlayStation 4. So, on to the game I'm playing. Back when I originally started this, that was near enough just filled with loads of spaces for characters. Now I can hardly see any that I need anymore. I will review the game, most likely with my next cast, which I'm hoping to put up tomorrow to catch up. So, but without further ado, I would like to do my beat 'em up top 10. As per normal, this is going to be in this particular order. I don't see there being any I'd swap out, but on a different day maybe the order might have been slightly different compared to what it is right now. But let's start off with number 10, Super Punch-Out. Came out on the Super Nintendo in 1994, developed by Nintendo themselves, but there was other versions floating around. Frank Bruno Boxing, which came out on like Amstrad CPC, and then as well we also have a version, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which came out on the NES. But I'm going to concentrate on the Super Nintendo. In 1994 I actually had to go and get this on import, so out came like the converter, and man was it a good game. You had to learn. It wasn't about button bashing. Button bashing might get you through maybe one, maybe two characters, but after that you'd be struggling. You had to learn people's movesets, what they do, where your gap was, where their weaknesses was. Sometimes you'd have to grind it, you know, take a few rounds to catch, ultimately to the point where you would be able to catch them with a few blows. Sometimes though it was a case of there was a weak spot and you expose it and you'd probably have 10-15 shots in there. Whichever way it went, it was a really good game and a lot of fun to be had completely. And I know like they've done other stuff, but I've never owned a Nintendo really since. But it was such a really good game. I think I had a Nintendo 64 for a good time, but everything else not really. So next up, number 9, Barry McGuigan's Boxing. It came out for the Amstrad CPC and it came out in 1985. It was made by Activision and Mastertronic. Well, one of those companies is around still, one of them isn't, unfortunately. Yet again, this one was one where you started off at either ranked 20th or 10th, and Boom Boom Bertie was a pain. But apart from that, it really was what you wanted from a boxing game. But you have to remember that Amstrad CPC had no facility really for you to save. A lot of games you'd have to do in one sitting, so therefore you'd be trying to, in the fastest way possible, beat them and maintain your rankings so you weren't losing really. And it was more than quite a good game. It was enjoyable, and certainly a lot of games have come out since that pretty much. You have to remember Amstrad only really had one attack button, so the fact you only had one button and you could actually make a boxing game with only one button was quite a good thing. Quite a variety of moves as well, which was quite surprising really. So number 8, Bad Dudes versus the Dragon Ninja. Now Bad Dudes versus the Dragon Ninja was just...
Oh, man.
It was amazing. It came out in 1988 on both arcade and Amiga. Now, yeah, I think I had an odd go on Amstrad, and I think there was a NES version that I had an odd go on, but neither of them really done justice to the actual game itself. And man, was it a good game. I can remember pumping pounds into this thing, and I do believe it was only like 10 or 20p a go at the local arcade. So therefore, the fact that I pumped pounds into it should suggest, even though I'd beaten it previously, I'd still want to go there and have a go. And sometimes your friends would be there, or sometimes somebody would be like, oh, can I join in? And it was good. It was just something different, and it really was quite a good looking game considering its age. It was made by Data East from the point of view of arcade, and Imagine Software from the point of view of Amiga. But certainly, if I, being quite honest, even if there was an arcade nearby today, I still think that this would be a game I would actually still play to this very day. On to number 7, out on arcade and Super Nintendo, Knights of the Round, made by Capcom. It came out originally in 1991 on arcade and then Super Nintendo in 1994. Now the Super Nintendo version had one less character. This was due to restrictions upon cartridge size, really. Yet again, it was one I had to buy on import, so out come that nice converter again, and that worked very nicely. And it was a really entertaining game. I cannot say anything otherwise. It really was what you want from a side-scrolling beat-em-up. It borrowed heavily from Golden Axe, but what it borrowed, it put new shine on, whether or not it be graphics or gameplay. And as such, to me, it was one of the better side-scrolling beat-em-ups. At number 6, we have Mortal Kombat 2. Out for arcade, Mega Drive and Super Nintendo in 93 and 94 for both console versions. As well, it was developed by Midway for arcade, Probe for Mega Drive, and Sculptured for Super Nintendo. Unlike the original, Gore was in for Nintendo this time as well. It was a lot more fluid and the action was a lot more faster paced. It played really well. I think it was really the last real Mortal Kombat that I put any real time into, but it was a good game, good two-player game, and it still sticks out to me all these years later. At number 5, Streets of Rage 2, out originally for Mega Drive in 1992, PS3 in 2009 and PS4 in 2018, developed by Sega. I remember going to a friend of mine, Mark Topless's house, and playing this to absolute death. It was everything that you wanted from a game and then more besides. And it was, you had several levels. What it did really well. It kept you wanting to come back for more. Somebody gets abducted, and again you and your friends have got to go and save them. But that was the story. But it wasn't about the story. It was about the gameplay, and it was about the game working as a two-player game. It done that, and it done it in style, and it was really good. It's a pity that the third one was not quite as good, but hopefully one day they will release more games like this, because I think there is a hole everywhere on every system for this kind of game. At number 4, we have Victory Boxing. This game come out for PlayStation 1 in 1995. I do believe it came out for Saturn as well, but I only played it on the PlayStation 1. It was developed by Victor Software. Now, I think there was a second one on PS2, but it was nowhere near as good as this. This was a game that was brilliant. You had to either win the title, defend it 10 times and then retire, or you could have 100 fights and then retire. I think the best I ever managed was 98 fights, 98 wins, 98 knockouts. 2 losses by knockout. So, and it was good. It had weight divisions. It was also good as well because it dealt with rivalries, which I think sometimes some boxing games haven't necessarily done so well. And to me, it really stepped up and it was good. Other games might have come out later on. A really good example of the later on games is Knockout Kings and things like that. But I don't think any of them quite had, whilst they might have looked better than this, I think that the mechanics of this game and the way that it worked, I believe, are better. So, number 3, Double Dragon, came out for arcade and PS4. Now, I know there was other versions, and I know I had a quick blast on them, but none of them, not even the Amiga version, come close to the arcade. I had to wait until PS4 came along to finally get a good version. Made by Technos Japan, 1987 for arcade, 2017 for PS4. Another one of those games that yet again yet again amazingly, it's one of those ones that I piled an awful lot of money into to play on arcade, and it done exactly what it said on the tin. It was an arcade beat 'em up scroller. There was no choice in characters, but I don't think that really mattered. I think what mattered to that game, at least, was the gameplay. Still play 2-player even nowadays, and to me, I think it is one of those games that I will never ever really give up playing. But I used to put pounds into it even after beating it. There'd be times where I beat it 2-3 times in a day. On to number 2 then. Came out on Super NES and arcade, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Hyper Fighting. I believe the arcade was a slightly more advanced version, but still it was a good game. It came out in 1993 on Super Nintendo, with the advanced version in 1994. So, on to... It was one that made me have to buy a Super Nintendo, and I still believe that it is one of the best Street Fighters even nowadays. And if you have friends, certainly you would want to certainly have that game in your collection so you could face off against each other. And I don't think even nowadays it stands up to the test of time, and it does. On to number 1, Tekken 3, out on PlayStation 1 and arcade, 1998 for PlayStation 1, 1997 for arcade, developed by Namco. Even though Tekken 7 is out right now, give me Tekken 3 any day. It is a really, really good game, and it deserves every bit of praise it has ever got. The fact there were so many characters, so much to unlock, you couldn't live if you knew your different combos.
Reminding all citizens
if you did, you could.
Happy Kang Day, everyone.
If you knew all your
It's not Friday.
if you knew your combos, it wouldn't matter if somebody button bashed, and it wouldn't.
Also Kang Day. Happy
So,
Kang Day.
to me, I think it is really. It's one of those games that define the PlayStation 1, and certainly I hope that one day Namco find lightning in a bottle a second time and come up with a game as good as this one. Anyway, thanks for listening. Comment if you agree or disagree. Just put down your own top 10 and tell me where I went wrong. Anyway, enjoy your day. Old School Gamer signing off. Bye Millie. Bye Lloyd.
Found that walking, talking totem.